And Tom is as well, so I think we can go.
Okay. Call to order, Kathleen Allen.
She's on mute. I think she's
Here, sorry.
That's okay. Tom Chapa. I see him. Heather Del Conte.
Here.
Pamela Dowd.
Here.
Lisa Glidden.
Here.
James McKenzie.
here.
Linda Serino.
Here.
Zeta Olson.
Here.
We can now move to the superintendent's report.
Actually, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry. It should be the Board of Education. Unfinished business, athletic events regarding spectators.
Yes. If everyone remembers, we were in the midst of a motion that Tom had made that we tabled, and it did get a first and a second. So we need to start here. And so we have a first and a second. And so we are in the midst of discussion for his motion, which asked for, Tom, do you want to reiterate, or Jim, sorry, do you want to reiterate your motion?
That's fine. The motion was that there be no spectators at all at our home sporting events.
Okay, great. So since we have a first and a second, we can now enter into discussion. Is there any discussion? Pam?
How do we amend the motion? I'm wondering if we could amend the motion to just have Oswego spectators limited to, it'd be 2 per athlete, I believe the recommendation is, and ask our visitors to respect our decision and honor no spectators from out of town, except for, I think we have to have an exception for college scouts / coaches, as long as they contact Rhonda ahead of time. Can we make an amendment to like that?
Well, I thought we asked Rhonda to find out, to give us some information on, examples of what other districts are doing when we discussed this before we, when it was tabled. So do we have any information how other districts are handling it?
Mathis, I think you're muted.
Yes, I do have information that is out there, and there really is a mix. There are some districts that are allowing crowd spectators to come. There are some districts that have been talking about having no spectators. I know of one off the top of my head in the area. I hate to give districts names out loud, but it's public. It's West Genesee. They're talking about no spectators at all at this point in time. So there's a mixture of what's going on. It's kind of like each community is doing kind of what's best for them for the most part. So that's the one district I know of that's talking through not having spectators at all. I believe it's been published on their website. Rhonda, are you there?
Can I just add, not to be a stickler, but Pam, do you feel free to pull your amendment until we have a full discussion? Would that be okay?
Yes, that's absolutely okay. I will pull that amendment off the table.
Okay, since we don't have a first and a second yet, why don't we continue with discussion under Jim's motion first?
I think
Rhonda?
from what I know that other schools are doing what's, like Dr. Calvin said, what fits them, their facilities. So for example, a lot of schools have a facility that's a single point entry, which is easier to more managing for contact tracing. But they're also doing it too based on their population of their student athletes, whether there's a strong contingency in the community of split families or different things like that. They're trying to take into everything that's basically per their group of kids and their families within their community. So Dr. Calvin's right that everybody's kind of across the board of just what best fits their needs, their finances, security, and the different systems that have to be put into place because of COVID.
I saw Baldwinsville is doing 2 spectators per athlete. They published that.
That would be home and away, I think, Kathleen, correct?
Yeah, I think it was.
I think that was the state recommendation.
Well, wasn't the state recommendation, or one of the ones, Mathis, I think that you had in there in terms of just having home spectators, correct? And not having visitors? Wasn't that a recommendation from one of the organizations?
I'm not sure about the organizations. What I saw in the state's recommendation was the 2 per athlete, basically. If you would like, I'd also would like to share with the board, you know, the only other concern that's out there. So you have a couple different regulations, right? So the NICEFA recommendation doesn't altogether coincide with the state's recommendation, just so we're aware, right? So in the state, there's supposed to be no larger than like 50 people gathering at one time. So the governor gave an allowance for one gathering at schools that would be bigger than 50, and that was for graduation, but it was a one-time kind of thing, right? So there's supposed to be still this like no more than 50 people gathering, but yet NICEFA has its recommendations out there. So it's an example of things not really coinciding across the state, and that's kind of what happens sometimes when people don't really think through things altogether. So there's some of that concern that's out there. So you do want to, I would say, you know, whatever is done, you want to be careful with the size and the amount of crowd, because certainly it's supposed to be within like around that 50 people or less. And if you did do 2 per our people, certainly you have the opportunity to be able to do that, right? If it was just our side. But that, just thought I'd throw that out there. Okay, to answer, I hope I answered your question, Tom. Great.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Well,
I'm sorry. Does the 50 include the athletes also?
Thanks, Pam. That was my question.
It's kind of like all over the place. Again, NICE will put out some stuff and you're like, huh? It's really confusing, right? But I will tell you, I spoke recently with my DS about this, RDS, and he certainly also shared with me, you know, the 50 is, you really kind of want to be careful and keep it like at the 50. So it's kind of confusing. We're all still searching for information on this, but I would say if you're going to be safe on the safe side, I think the 50 certainly is something you kind of really need to think through. And I would suggest we try to stick to closest to that number as we could, right?
Mathis, are you saying that the executive order for 50 still stands? Because I would say that trumps anything that the Athletic Association puts out would be the executive order. And so if graduation is the only exception to that order, we're still under that order. And that would definitely, you know, supersede an Athletic Association recommendation.
Right. So we, you know, I have reached out to our attorney to ask about it, and there's some confusion, right? We're not certain on that, to be quite frank with you. However, that executive order, is it still out there? It is still out there. Are there districts that are following through with that? There are. Because again, as I shared, I talked with our DS just a day ago about this to ask what his thoughts were, spoke with our attorney about it. You know, the DS says his suggestion would be as close to the 50 as you possibly can. So it's very confusing. Again, this is what happens when different parts of the state do things and they don't really kind of, in my opinion, think it through well, and they just want to move ahead. But we really, this is one of those things that comes up that you kind of get, it can cause confusion, and it has amongst the field, right?
Do we have any idea? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, just any idea relative, because I know we did the cost aspect of the initial proposal, then the varsity only proposal. We did the survey as well, but what would the cost will we incur? Because we've still got that element of this decision, you know, play into this decision as well.
Right. So I can tell you that our costs have gone down significantly because we didn't need as much transportation as we thought we were going to need before. You know, we had it up for a number of different sports. The transportation cost for just, you know, pickup is about $10,500 total. That's for all the kids in. Security. So the big things that we would need to be paying for is the security and the screeners for the games. And so for soccer, with the 37 kids. What we're looking at right now is about security costs at about $41.86 for soccer, cross country, and tennis for each of those. And then for screeners for games, so for soccer, we're looking at about $1,400 because we have multiple teams, $1,440. Cross country is $360 for that group of 24 kids. And for tennis, we're looking at about $240 for screeners. So, your costs go anywhere from around 6,000 plus, and then it can be as low as just under 5,000 for screeners and security. And that's the biggest part of what we're doing right now. That's the biggest, part besides the transportation for the cross country particularly.
So now, Mathis, if I remember correctly, part of the cost was also having some kind of directionality put down into the fields and all of that. So and I saw Pam writing, so please correct me, Pam, but just kind of listening to what you said, we're talking maybe close to $20,000 to bring spectators in?
So I can put up a whole screen if the board would like. I'm going to try to do this. I'm new at Google Hangout, so just give me a little leeway here, but hang on for a moment. I'm going to try to bring it up for you on the screen. And Nancy, certainly as I'm talking, you certainly can feel free to chime in there. Let me see if I can do this here. One moment, board. Okay. 1 second there. Can you see that screen board that I'm on right now? Let me just see. Oh, go back one moment. Okay, board. Let's see. Can you see that screen there right now, everyone? All right. So here's what we have right now. So our numbers have changed because of the numbers of students. So soccer, you can see the number is 37, golf at 12, cross country at 24, tennis at 13. Transportation for sports away games, here's what our costs look like right now. For soccer, $10,200, $3,600 for golf, $1,800 for cross country, and tennis, $1,800. Pickup for practice. So this is just for one bus for the teams combined because we didn't have that many students on all of the teams who needed transportation. We had enough for one bus. So the total cost is $10,500. Security cost, you'll see they're each $41.86, right? Tryout screeners, we didn't have to actually do the screening tryouts. We were able to find a way to do it with the coaches. Rhonda and our therapist, our trainer were able to do those screening pieces for tryouts. So we were able to save some money there. So screeners for games. So soccer is the biggest one that will need more the help with screening at $1,440. Cross country's at $360, tennis at $240. Then your cleaning equipment is at $500 per for soccer, cross country, and tennis. Custodial services, we have estimated $2,500 for soccer, cross country, and tennis. And then signage is $200. There's your signage, Jim, that you were asking about, $200 per sport for the 3 sports here. Additional field bleacher markings at $2,500 for soccer, $2,500 for cross country, and then tennis, $1,500. And then we have the nurse costs because we do want to make sure we have nursing services available in case someone needs to be isolated or if we have an issue with COVID-19 symptoms. So about $1,000 for each of those. Hand washing stations. So, I think if you remember correctly, we shared that we can buy our own or we could rent those out, but about $1,000 for each one of those that we can place in those areas. And then your total cost at about $23,000 for soccer. Our normal cost for the year would have been $10,200. And so when you separate what we normally would have paid compared to that, it's an extra $13,000 plus for soccer. With golf, the total cost is $3,600 total. And remember, the golf is taken care of over at a golf course, and they do a lot of this to help us out, basically. With cross country, the total price came to $24,500, and the yearly cost that we had budgeted was for about $1,800. So there's an extra $22,746 estimated for cross country. And then with tennis, $12,926 is your total cost that we now estimate. The yearly cost that we normally would have put on this was $1,800, and so there's an extra $11,126. So when you put them all together, you add all 3 of the final costs there at the bottom, the total cost comes to $47,198. Nancy, was there anything else that we may have missed there? I want to make sure I got all that set.
No, you have everything that was in there. The only thing that I might want to mention is, and we had not addressed this yet, but the hand washing stations, we did choose not to buy. We are renting them, but we also have a cost to rent Blue Boys as well. So with that, from the time that we have to rent it for the season for each of these sports, it should come in around less than that number, but not much more.
Okay. Jim, I hope I was able to answer your questions around cost, but this is what it looks like across the board. Now that we've taken some of the numbers down, the needs for transportation have been reduced. And then yellow, again, I put in the two major things that we are looking at those competitions, and those are the security and the screeners, that piece, which I feel like we would really need to have these in place, especially the screeners, because we have to contact trace at these events, and we need to make sure that we've got everything in place. If we're going to do it, we want to do it right. Right? Okay.
So Matt, you did answer my question. Thank you very much. This is very comprehensive. I appreciate it. So the way it looks to me, because at our last board meeting, we agreed to have these 4 varsity sports, and they've started up, and that's a committal. It seems to me the first 2 lines on transportation and pick up for practice are committed because we've done that for these students. It seems though the rest of the line items are about being able to bring in spectators. So it really seems to me as we're more along the lines of 25,000 or more. I mean, Pam, you can, if you, I've seen you writing again down there. You know, there's the difference to the way I look at this chart. To me, I look at the chart as the first 2 lines are making sure our student athletes, especially the varsity ones here, are getting their opportunity, right? The rest of them are making sure that people can come watch them. And that's, if I'm, and I guess I'm just maybe actually asking a question, is that the differentiation here?
For the most part, yes. The nursing part you would still need, though, for the athletes, just to make sure if something goes wrong, someone comes with a COVID-19 piece or 19 symptom, you have someone there to help out. But for the most part, I would say you're correct.
The cleaning of equipment. Equipment cleaning would stay in because that's the athletes basically are using that.
I would agree. And also those hand washing stations. So if you look at the regulations, it talks about the hand writing stations as well. Yeah, I would agree. Thank you, Pam. I would agree.
So, you know, just kind of looking at those minus the hand washing stations, we're getting close to $30,000.
Do we keep the custodians? Don't they have to, aren't the kids using restrooms?
Yeah,
Custodians would have to be still in there also, I'm thinking. They aren't eliminated.
So that's back down to about 20.
And will there be a portion of security regardless of if there are no guests, there's no security, or no visitors, or no spectators, no security, or will there still be security involved? So will a portion of that still be in there?
So I think, it's going to have to, personally, I think we have to be on the safe side. There may be people, if we say no, spectators who may still show up. So I think it's going to kind of be a test to see how things go at first. If we find that folks from the community are certainly responsive to our request and willing to work with us, then we certainly might be able to back away from some of our security pieces. But I think it'll be a test and trial to see how things go once we get started, if we were to do no spectators.
Mathis, may I make a comment?
Sure.
First of all, I know I voted no to even have sports, and we do have it. My concern with all of this is our city right now is showing more cases within our community. I think our job as board members is always to be financially looking at numbers and the safety of our kids, and the most important thing to me here is keeping our kids in school as much as possible. I just have to make that statement because we're putting so much time and effort into these athletics that I'm tending to get a bit frustrated. I'd love to see our focus be more on keeping kids in school in a safe way and our academics and our 20% cutback and what are we going to do when that happens? And that's my statement. I just have to make it.
Linda, can I just say that because I think it feeds right into what you're saying is that if we limit contact, we're doing our due diligence in terms of keeping more kids in school, and we're also being fiscally responsible there as well. And we're dealing with the social component by getting the kids the opportunity to play. So, if we were to limit that, and I do agree with you that we have to continue to look at that light that's at the end of the tunnel and think of it more of a, sometimes I'll think of it as a train more than light at the end of the tunnel in terms of our fiscal responsibility, and be able to be very mindful of that wherever we can.
Thanks, Tom.
Rhonda, I have a question about recruiters. One of the reasons we picked varsity only was because we were well aware that some of those kids, not a lot of them, but some of them, are being scouted and didn't want to lose their opportunity to be seen by recruiters. So is there a way, are they an exception to the rule when it comes to spectators, or are they spectators? And they would, clearly they would need all the same security measures to be at one of our events, I would think.
Recruiters and any media have to check in with the athletic director first. So they are separate than typical spectator. They still will have to be screened and vetted. I will do my due diligence on doing making sure their credentials are solid, and then move in that direction. But they always contact myself first prior to coming to any of the grounds or anything like that. Local papers do the same thing as well. They go through me to make sure it's okay to reach out to a coach and or come and take pictures or do any kind of correspondence with our student athletes or coaches.
Okay, that's excellent to know, because I know that was a concern of some people as we're talking about spectators. So that's a whole different situation. And we're really talking about, are we going to let parents watch their kids and play soccer, all of those things for the varsity years, years.
And it's really, Heather, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in, but it's really just for soccer for all intents and purposes, wouldn't it be? Because you think in terms of tennis, that would be more than likely you could sit in your car and watch, or keep a distance and watch. Same golf, there's really no spectators involved. We're really just talking about soccer for all intents and purposes, and maybe some areas of cross country, correct?
Yes, definitely cross country.
Cross country.
Yeah. But again, we have the space there for cross country and the distance. I would think, because of the space on the chutes that we've been advised, the 200 yards, to open that area up and have distance.
But if we say no spectators, we're not saying let's accommodate them, let's figure that out. We're saying no spectators. So I think that's the question at hand. Are we going to go through the process of how do we keep everybody safe, and are we going to spend these resources, and are we going to go through that process and allow very few spectators, trying to keep to that 50? If you do the math, it's going to be hard to stay to that 50 with 2 per athlete. You're really talking 1 per athlete, and you're going to be over with soccer. So, that's really the question we're asking. Are we going to go through that process, expend the resources to make sure everyone's safe? Is that valuable enough? Or are we going to just say, for now, no spectators? It's a lot of money, and it really is a lot of risk for our community.
So I would vote in favor of Jim's motion. And for me, what's weighing more heavily is the public health component than the financial component is, although clearly that's there as well. So I would speak in support of the motion to not allow spectators.
Just 2 quick things. Along with college recruiters, I know a lot of times what they're doing, what they've been doing now and what they were doing in the spring and summer as well, is they're relying on videotape. Not videotape. That's such an old word now. But recording. The recording of kids playing and submitting those. My son did it for a baseball organization over the summer, where he was going to things, recording what other kids are doing, and then sending it to a recruiter organization, and then they send it out. So, so you need to have to accommodate those kids as well, the varsity kids that we're talking about. The other thing is, as far as security, I'm wondering if that number is a little deceiving, because we've always had security for games. We've had security for volleyball games. We've had security for football games, lacrosse. I mean, we've got security budgeted every year for athletic events. So that's not in addition to, especially if we're doing half the sports that we normally do.
Well, if I could just respond, and then certainly Nancy, you can too. Not only did we put in our security staff, but we also put in that number cost for police, because, well, first of all, we know that there are some from our security folks who just don't want to do this because this is in the middle of COVID-19, and there's some people who just don't want to be involved in this right now. And then the other concern is, when you're dealing with spectators, especially now, and our parents, and you say no, if they came in with symptom issues, we felt we might need an extra hand with the police. And so we tried to look at what the cost would be for police, in addition to what it might be for our staff, if our staff were willing to do it. And that's how you kind of came up to that price. So I would say each of these prices are an approximation. Our hope is that the cost will come in a little bit less than what we have there right now, Kathleen. So I hope I answered your question. But that's what we tried to do, is tried to find the right number that would be as close as kind of to what we thought. Nancy, would you like to share a little bit about that number for security as well?
Yes, Kathleen, we don't have the security built into the budget the way we used to a long time ago. Our security personnel, we used to have someone on the late shift, which could cover security. But if there were multiple games, we would never have anybody at those other games. It would be Rhonda, or Rhonda going back and forth, or Mike Schlichtig going back and forth between those games. Now all of our security guards are on first shift. So these costs would be overtime hours for our security guards if they choose to take on the overtime. They don't have to, but I've calculated in that if each of them did take overtime for each of our events, then that would be the cost, because some of our events are on the same day, so you would need multiple security personnel.
But you would have budgeted for in last year's budget, because we always did have security. I mean, I've been at volleyball games where I've seen Mark going back and forth, and Mike going back and forth. We've always had security at games.
That was when we used to have the third security guard on 11 to whatever that 7-hour shift was, to cover the lunch for security. But that was not the way it was planned for this year because of COVID. So we have all of them on first shift. So if any of and that's the way it was budgeted at the time when we did our reductions. So if we have anyone who is doing security for this year, it will be overtime.
We do have the team on doing that first shift, because we did need them that way this year, in terms of managing all the kids coming to school, managing getting everybody in with the temperature checks and everything, and then at the end of the day, it's the traffic control, it's the parents pickup, it's all of those things that we needed help and support with. Hi, Pam, go ahead.
Hi. So if we have no spectators, we still have to have some sort of security, you said, because people may show up. So will the security number be less than that if we do no spectators?
I think it's going to be, do I think it'll be less with no spectators? Eventually, I would say yes. But I think it's going to be kind of like go back to what I said before, a trial and error, right? We kind of need to see how it goes for the first couple of events, right? And hopefully many from our community will, be in agreement and support what we're trying to do. We don't kind of yet know until we kind of get going to see how people will respond. My hunch is that most people will try to work with us, right? But we'll have to see how that goes, to be honest with you. Do we hope that the number is less? That is our hope. We're hoping, like you see a reduction in these numbers now, but as we move forward, you'll continue to see a reduction. That's our hope. We'll try our best to do that. But we had to kind of budget for the kind of like the worst case scenario, or really like a middle case scenario, basically, not the worst. That's kind of what we tried to budget
Right.
for.
Right. So, but that's our big ticket. For those three sports right now, you're looking at $12,558. That is probably going to be staying right there and close to that, even if we say no spectators.
Yes, it could be. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that I think is certainly a big ticket. The transportation to the away games, that's a big ticket. But yes, and also I think the custodial services, those are big tickets. Yes, but definitely security will be a piece that we are going to have to pay a little bit more for than we've budgeted for at this time, I would say. Well, I hope you understand.
I just don't understand why that would have been done like that. And you're talking, the budget came to us in March, April. It was very late. And if we've always budgeted for these things, why would you have pulled that out when Mathis, you're saying, and I know that you weren't here then, but you're saying, this is worst case scenario. Wouldn't you have budgeted for security then? So I guess I just don't understand the reasoning because the board wasn't aware that security was pulled out differently and was budgeted for differently this year.
Good question. So again, I'm sorry, Kathleen, go ahead. I apologize. Did you want to finish?
No, this is real. It's frustrating because the board was not told that this security was not going to be budgeted for.
Right. So I think I'm
looking at these numbers. I've been at games. We've all been at games where we've seen security, and then now we're being told.
No, I think the maybe the mix-up is, so you had your security built in, but in the past, again, one of those security people was able to work that third shift, and you were able to cover that third shift with no difficulty. But this year, because of all of the things that have changed with COVID-19, we had to move those folks out to our elementary buildings to help us out during the daytime for multiple parts of the day, especially the beginning of the day when there's a lot of traffic coming into the schools and at the ends of the days. And then in the middle of the days, they're still helping us with people getting in and leaving out of schools. Like there's a lot going on. So I think the big difference is that people who would have been allocated for that third shift have been moved, at least that one person has. And so now you see some costs that you probably didn't have there before. I hope Nancy, is there anything else I think that's the big change there, if I remember correctly. Go ahead. You wanted to say something?
That is exactly the big change, that we had to move the third security guard shift to accommodate the need that we had in the elementary schools. The other thing is that where you would have seen a lot of security with that third shift, the overtime, other security guards really weren't taking it. So if we had multiple sports on the same night, it was very difficult to get security at those games. So last year, I believe that we actually offered a stipend to staff that would allow them to supervise at some of the games, and even people weren't taking that. So trying to get security at some of these games is difficult at best. We do the best we can, but there have been many games where there has been no security, and Rhonda has been running back and forth between games in order to supervise. So it has been a challenge.
And I think also just the only other thing to add is, so again, security was in your budget, so it's been moved a little bit around. But I think the other thing too is just adding in that we have put in here a little bit of wiggle room in case we need to have like a police officer to help us out. So there may be some folks who just say, we know that there's some people who are not really interested in doing the later shift security, especially not with COVID-19 right now, dealing with people. There's some folks who just don't want to do that. So we wanted to make sure we were covered. So we did try to put in what it might be in terms of cost for a police officer as well. We included that in the $4,000 for the season as well. So that makes your price a little bit up there a little bit more because they're a little bit more than our regular security people would cost us. I hope that helps to answer some of the confusion and frustration, Kathleen, I hope.
It's a little bit. It's still very frustrating. Can you give us in transmittal where the security guards, what kind of security we're covering for each elementary school, since the middle school's closed right now, high school's closed right now? Where are our security guards being utilized at the current time? Because I'd like to know now.
Sure. I can tell you now that they're amongst our elementary buildings, for sure, they're there. And then some of them still throughout the daytime do go to some of our secondary sites. We still have people coming in and going out during the daytime. So they're amongst all of our school buildings is really where they're at. But I can certainly in transmittal share more information with you if you'd like to on that as well, Kathleen, no problem. I can do that.
I have a quick question about incoming teams. So let's say we have no spectators. We're still going to have folks coming in from the outside. I'm assuming we would still need some security and some screeners in order to check those folks in, the players, the referees, the coaches, etc.
Yeah,
so I'm assuming some of these yellow costs are including those costs as well, correct?
Yes, especially under screeners for games, you will need people to definitely screen as people come in. Yes. So they're included in those screeners for games areas there. Yeah, under that section there, they are included.
Okay.
So we're spending that money anyway also, correct?
I'm sorry.
I think that, go ahead, Pam.
She says she's
I think what she's wondering is, so are these just spectator expenses? That's clearly no. These are also expenses for just having outside people coming in, but it would be less because obviously fewer people mean you need less security and you need fewer screeners. So it would be less, but it isn't like it goes down. Those lines go down to zero.
That's correct. Yes.
The officials will be screened by the athletic trainer, and then myself and the athletic trainer screen the coaches. And the responsibility is for, before the students leave their home site to come to Oswego to play, those student athletes have to be screened as well as the coach prior to getting on their bus. So that is the onus of the people that are traveling. So like we will have to screen our student athletes, our coach prior to getting on the bus so that our bus driver is safe. And then that's the expectation within our league.
So when they get off the bus, we don't screen them again?
No. I mean, we could. I always like to err on caution, but that Mike and I have already put the systems into place that he will be screening the officials when they come, and that him and I will both be screening our coaches, who then will screen our own student athletes.
Thank you for the clarification, Rhonda. My apologies. Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion on Jim's motion? I think Pam did want to make an amendment that is appropriate. And we could entertain that if she can get a first and a second.
So before we go to that, can I just have a point of clarification, please?
Yes.
Just go back to the beginning of the conversation. The media and those who are college recruiters who go through Rhonda are not considered part of spectators here. Those are considered separate. Is that as our understanding as we're classifying things? Yes, I see a thumbs up from Rhonda, just making sure. Okay. So because originally Pam was, had two parts of her motion. And so I just wanted to make to clarify that college recruiters are welcome. The media is welcome as long as they appropriately go through Rhonda ahead of time.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it will not need to be part of the motion. I've reconsidered because of numbers, and I think that I would like to make the motion 1 home spectator per athlete for the event. I would like to amend it to 1, not 2, so that we would definitely be staying underneath our 50 number that's given to us by the state.
I'll second that, Pam.
Okay, so we have a first and a second on an amendment to add one home spectator per athlete at our home events. Is there any discussion on just that amendment? And then we will vote on that amendment. If you are if you are against, if you really want no spectators, and obviously it's a no for the amendment. If you think that it's okay to have one, then you're a yes for the amendment. Just to clarify. All right, is there a discussion on the amendment for one spectator per student?
So I just have so I'm just going to make the point that when it comes to things like field bleaching markers and signage and some additional security and all of that those costs will still have to be incurred. If we're bringing anybody in, that signage and additional field bleacher markings, those are all still going to have to happen.
Any other discussion?
I guess I would add to it, I think it's going to be very hard to manage, like someone taking account of people, it's going to be hard to manage.
May I ask a question? Just for clarity, So when you say one spectator who comes in, is that just for our teams, and then the other teams we would say no spectators? I just want to make sure I was clear on that.
That is correct. Thank you. Yes, one spectator for our athletes, no outside spectators
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
for the health and safety.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I just have a question then. Possible student participants at 37 for soccer, plus coaches, plus athletes, and we're only allowed 50.
May I just clarify, the 37 is for not just one team, that's two teams, am I right? Right, so you got, split
That's
that,
correct.
right, so you got,
You froze, Mathis.
sorry, can you hear me now?
You're good.
All right. So there's a boys soccer team and there's,
Froze again.
I'm always glad when it's not me.
Oh,
Whoa, Mathis. Rhonda, maybe you can follow his train of thought.
the 37,
There he is. Okay.
can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so the 37 is not all one team, that's multiple teams, right? So that would bring the numbers down for the different competitions in terms of soccer.
right. I just want it helps me in that, but I'm just trying to do the math in my head in terms of if we're including the players on the field, we're including coaches, refs, anybody else for that 50 number. Are we going to have to delineate? And security is going to have to say, "I'm sorry, we have to stop because you're number 50," and we open that can of worms. That's just my consideration.
I mean, one of the things that we could certainly manage this on our end is, we could ask kids, who do you think is going to be coming, right? We can get names beforehand. Some districts are doing things like handing out passes for certain people to come. But yes, I mean, once your crowd starts to gets past that number, we would say we've kind of reached capacity, which is again why you probably might, hopefully we won't, but you might need that security there to help and assist with that.
Yeah, it looks like cross country might be the only one that really pushes the limits the most, because boys and girls run together. Am I right on that? So, the pass system might actually work, and maybe some parents, have to take turns.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any more discussion on just the amendment? Okay, if not, Karen, could you do a roll call vote? And this is again on just the amendment for one home spectator per home athlete.
Kathleen Allen,
Yes.
Tom Chapa,
No.
Heather Del Conte,
Yes.
Pamela Dowd,
Yes.
Lisa Glidden,
No.
James McKenzie,
No.
Linda Serino.
No.
You have a 4-3 vote against the amendment.
Okay, so that amendment fails, and we go back to the original resolution or motion, which was Jim's, for no spectators at all. Unless there's another amendment to that motion, we can go ahead and vote on that. So, any
I don't
other?
think we can get a half a body, so I would say there's not another one.
Well, there could have been someone amongst us that wanted to have, spectators from both sides and 5 a person or something like that. So it would probably fail, but I'm just saying, just putting it out there. All right, I think we're ready to vote on that motion, Karen.
Kathleen Allen,
Can you read the motion?
this motion is for no spectators for sporting events.
This fall.
No.
This fall. Kathleen Allen,
No.
Tom Chapo,
Yes.
Heather Del Conte,
No.
Pamela Dowd,
No.
Lisa Glidden,
Yes.
James McKenzie,
Yes.
Linda Serino.
Yes.
That is 4-3 for the amendment of no spectators.
Thank you, everyone, for all your contributions and for just a very healthy discussion. And Mathis, thank you for getting us all those numbers, and Nancy, so that we can have a very informed discussion. Okay.
Next would be the superintendent's report with Dr. Calvin.
Okay. All right, board. So just really briefly, just wanted to share some updates with you as to how things have been going this year. Can you see the screen? I hope you can see that screen okay. All right, so just to let you know, the year is up and going. We're now into week number 2. Our schools have opened safely. We continue to work through any and every concerns as they arise. What we would like to share with folks who may be watching tonight, and what we continue to share with our community, is if there are concerns, we certainly are open to hearing feedback. We ask people to reach out to whether if it's a building concern, to reach right out to the buildings and let them know what's going on. If it's a transportation concern, call the transportation department. Whatever it is, food service, any concerns that are out there, our goal is to resolve them as quick as we possibly can. So we certainly seek your feedback, and we're continuing to work on things as they come to our attention, and we'll continue to do so. I want to thank our staff, and I also want to thank our community for their hard work and all of their patience as we reopened our schools. It has been a monumental task, but people have been really working hard, rolling up their sleeves, doing the very best that they can. And I really appreciate all of their hard work and effort. And I want to especially thank our teachers, just all of our staff, our maintenance staff, everybody, our clerical staff. They've just been really working hard. And I want them to hear me say loud and clear, as I continue to say every place I go, thank you, because we couldn't do it without you. I just want to share with the board, aside from that, some technology updates. So I shared with you about a week ago, I think we had a question from Lisa about technology. We had a number of kids who came to our district, new to us. We had some kids who did not sign up for technology before the school year started. And that was about 200 people that we had learned about, really in about around a week and a day's worth of time. We learned about this. So quickly, once we learned we had this number of folks who wanted technology, we began to see how, we began to check our orders to see how long it would take before we can get all of our stuff in. But we also started to reach out to other districts. And we had a number of districts who really were willing to lend their hand to give us stuff to borrow until our stuff came in. Our BOCES was willing to help us. Hannibal was a really big district willing to help. Phoenix willing to help us. And I want to let those folks know thank you. I've also told them word of mouth, thank you very much. We had originally 162 of those 200 requests come from the high school. So we have filled all of those requests. We have another 20 or 30 that came from the middle school. All of those requests have now been filled. And so now we're working at the elementary school. But just so the board is aware, after filling those 200 requests, we got another 250 requests within the last 3 days. And this is because, again, we have new people moving in, but we also have some folks who started out at home and thought that their device might be able to get them through the school year, and they realized that there were some real challenges with those devices. So we have heard from people, we've let them know that we are busy at work. Our next group of Chromebooks will be coming to us on October 6th. That is the expected delivery date before or on October 6th. And we have another delivery date, and that date on the 6th is 262 Chromebooks coming. Then we have another 300 that are coming October 31st. So, you know, as people have been contacting us, we've been letting them know. And board, if people reach out to you, we wanted to let you know what was going on. So our number has grown, and our goal is to meet that challenge as soon as we possibly can. So October the 6th and the 31st is what we're doing at this point in time. I want folks to know. Okay.
And we have to pay for that out of this budget, correct?
So yes, that would come out of this budget. Yes. And we've talked a little bit about those costs as we've gone through this year. So yes. I wanted to let you also know just about marching band that did come up in our last meeting and discussion. I wanted you to know that we have already started to really collaborate with our music staff around marching band. Just a couple reminders, there are no competitions at this time. The season normally also ends the last week in October, so the time is kind of crunched right now. However, we've been thinking a lot through this past couple of weeks. We see that there's some other districts that are doing some smaller kinds of seasons, where typically what they're doing is they're having a couple practices, and then they'll have like a special presentation. And many of the districts are having, like, you know, during those presentations, they're highlighting seniors for that night to make sure seniors get their night in on that marching band. So we're looking to see how we might be able to do that. You know, one of the thoughts that we're certainly thinking about is transportation, of course, to make sure that we can get kids here. We've already started to survey our kids and our seniors and our parents to see who might need what. And so far, we have heard from our seniors, a lot of them, what they've said to us that they would like to see is they want to have a season, but they really want to be out on the turf. Many of them would like to have their special night out on that beautiful turf. They would like to do something special. Many of them have asked, can we try to do something more towards the spring? Our teacher actually, Scott and one of the other band teachers actually reached out just before the meeting and asked if it might be possible to do something, you know, around the spring. Why? Because the weather would be better. We're getting close to the end of October. 2, you know, hopefully things would have cleared up. 3, they would have a chance to really be on that turf and do something really nice for the public. And they also think that it might be a nice way to recruit kids for the band season for the next year, but it also end off the year on a really solid, top-notch note. I am open to that idea. I want to thank the band folks. I know that some of them are on tonight. I want to thank them for being willing to collaborate with us and work with us to see how we might make this possible for our kids. So, you know, I just wanted to share with you where we're at right now. We got a little bit more working through some of the semantics that we want to work on. So at our next meeting, we come back next week, we'll have some finalized more details for the board to just let you know what we're thinking. So just again, they're thinking they'd like to try to do this more towards the spring, take a couple weeks and do something for the kiddos when hopefully we got through the busyness with some of the COVID-19 and not rush it right now, because we only have a couple weeks before the season ends. And I remain very open to that idea. I'm good with that. Any questions on that at all, board? Everybody okay? All right, so I'll be back next week and I'll tell you a little bit more as to where we're headed with that. You already talked about athletic and spectators. So that's all I have for you tonight, unless there's any other questions. Everybody good? All right, and again, I thank all of our staff and our community and our parents. Thank you for your patience. I'm all set for tonight.
Next is personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
Hello, everybody. We just have a handful of items that were a little bit more timely, so we appreciate the opportunity to get those taken care of tonight. We have a professional staff recommendation, regular substitute at Fitzhugh Park. Heidi Williams-Holsizer is replacing Judy Osetic. B, we have our videographers, Matt Bach and Eric McCroby, who provide us with the support during our virtual and or in-person board meetings. C, an extra compensatory recommendation, the boys varsity soccer coach, Mike Patney, is presented. And D, a support staff recommendation, provisional appointment for John Verselli's computer specialist who's replacing Matt Schneider, who we recently appointed as the senior land tech.
Could I have a motion A through D?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is executive session. If for the reason of matters which will imperil the public safety and employment history of a particular person or corporation. Would that be correct?
Yes. Yes, and also the work performance of a particular staff member as well.
Okay. If I could have a motion, please, for executive session.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
I'm
Second.
Kathleen. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I will send an updated invite for the executive session for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Have a good night.